This is the Mexican Revolution by Evan Diaz and
David Aceves. This is Porfirio Diaz, dictator of Mexico for about 35 years. This dictator welcomed foreign investors from all around the world. These investors helped create railroads and oil drills. Unfortunately, these only benefited elites from Mexico and certain upper-class people. The peasants from the lower class had to work in haciendas and had to raise their own money.
Francisco Madero was a liberal reformer. When Diaz was close to retirement, he decided to have an election, and Francisco Madero won that election. So Diaz decided to imprison him, and when he imprisoned him, Madero got angry, and he just started that revolution, which is what Diaz arrested him for, which was actually kind of ironic and funny. Victoriano Huerta is a general that assassinated Madero and became dictator of Mexico 2 years later. The reason he assassinated Madero is because he did not agree with his policy and decided that maybe Mexico should be under his lead. And 2 years later, he put that dream to his vision and became the dictator.
Francisco Villa, also known as Pancho Villa, Emiliano Zapata, and Venustiano Carranza were all against Huerta. Villa and Zapata were peasants themselves, and they knew what it was like to live that life. They wanted to make broad changes to improve the life of a peasant. Carranza was a rich landowner and disagreed, but after they defeated Huerta together, Carranza turned on Villa and Zapata and defeated them. He then became the dictator of Mexico. After Carranza turned on Villa and Pancho, he became president of Mexico in 1917. He reluctantly passed a new constitution, and after that, reforms slowly began to materialize. After the Constitution of 1917 was approved, three major issues were addressed: land, religion, and labor. The government had way more control over the economy after the Constitution was approved. It also permitted the breakup of large estates, placed restrictions on foreigners owning land, and allowed nationalization, or government taking over of natural resources. Churches and the property that they owned became property of the nation, and it set a minimum wage and protected workers' rights to strike. Apart from men gaining rights, women also got rights. Women were now allowed to take part in legal suits and have equal authority with men in spending family funds.
The Industrial Revolutionary Party, known as the PRI, was created in 1929 by the government to accommodate all groups into it. Those groups consisted from businessmen to military leaders, including peasants and workers. The PRI was able to get these people in their groups by letting their goals become a part of the PRI's goals. But it did this while keeping the power in its own hands, so it made it seem like the people had power when really it was the PRI controlling everything. This allowed it to quell uprisings and revolutions while also being stable. And this lasted all the way up from 1930s to 2000, which is a ridiculous amount of time. Saro Cardenas. He distributed millions of acres of land to the peasants. He distributed it to these peasants through a communal land program. The government supported labor unions and launched a massive effort to combat illiteracy. That's why schools were made and libraries were set up. And that is the Mexican Revolution.